The Swiss Guard and the Beast, a Vatican confrontation. A tourist unleashed his pit bull on a Swiss guard, thinking fear would break his discipline. But when the guard's hands moved with precision, the crowd gasped. His threatening beast had met its match. Here's what happened. The morning sun cast long shadows across St. Peter's Square as thousands gathered for the weekly Angelus prayer. Guard Sergeant Lukas Baumann maintained his position in the inner security circle. His blue, red, and yellow uniform, a vivid contrast against the ancient Vatican stones. The familiar sounds of pilgrims' conversations in dozens of languages filled the air, but something else caught his trained attention. The low, rumbling growl of a pit bull straining against a thick chain leash. "Easy there, Diesel," a man's voice carried across the crowd, dripping with false affection that barely masked underlying aggression. "You'll get your chance to meet the toy soldier soon enough." Jack Turner, a stocky American in his 40s, wearing cargo shorts and a sleeveless shirt that revealed heavily tattooed arms, pushed through the crowd. His pit bull Diesel strained against the chain, powerful muscles rippling beneath his dark coat. Several pilgrims instinctively stepped back, creating a small clearing around Turner and his dog. A mother hurriedly pulled her young daughter behind her, while an elderly Italian couple exchanged worried glances. Two French nuns moved their prayer books protectively across their chests. A group of seminary students from Ireland whispered urgently among themselves, one reaching for his phone before thinking better of it. The pit bull's presence itself wasn't unusual. Many visitors brought pets to the Vatican grounds. But there was something in Turner's bearing, a deliberate menace in the way he handled the chain, that set off warning signals. "Look at him standing there," Turner announced to no one in particular, jerking Diesel's chain as the dog's growls intensified. "All dressed up in that medieval costume, thinking he's something special." He moved closer to Baumann's position, deliberately allowing Diesel to strain toward the guard. "What do you think, boy? Think he'll keep standing still if you give him a proper greeting?" Baumann remained motionless, his eyes fixed forward with practiced discipline. 8 years of military service, including specialized training with military working dogs, had taught him to assess threats without betraying any reaction. He noted Turner's stance, the way he kept shortening Diesel's chain only to let it slack again. The pit bull's ears flicked backward with each sharp tug, then forward again when the tension eased. Turner's grip alternated between proper control and something else entirely. "Sir," a middle-aged man from a tour group spoke up, "perhaps you should step back. The guards are active-duty military." "Shut it," Turner snapped, yanking Diesel's chain again. "Me and Diesel here are just saying hello, aren't we, boy?" The pit bull's growl deepened, but there was confusion in his stance now, responding to his owner's aggression while picking up on something else in Baumann's steady presence. "Unless you'd like to be his first greeting of the day." The tour guide began quietly moving his group away, recognizing the signs of escalating trouble. But Turner had found his audience, and his voice carried louder across the square. "What's wrong, soldier boy? Not so brave when faced with something that can actually bite back, are you?" From the papal apartment's balcony above, Pope Francis appeared for the Angelus prayer, his white robes visible to the thousands gathered below. The sight should have brought reverence to the moment, but Turner's voice cut through the sacred atmosphere. Baumann maintained his position, but his training had already identified multiple concerns: the deliberate provocation, the weaponization of an animal, and the growing risk to civilians as Turner moved even closer, Diesel's chain now barely taut. Years of experience told him this situation would require more than ceremonial discipline. It would demand the perfect balance of authority and restraint. "You know what I love about Diesel?" Turner circled closer, his voice carrying menace. "He's got a real nose for weakness." He loosened the chain just enough to let the pit bull edge forward, muscular shoulders bunching. And right now, he's smelling plenty of it. A group of school children huddled behind their teacher, wide-eyed as the scene unfolded. The teacher, a tall woman with graying hair, tried to guide them toward the basilica steps. A young German couple clutched their guidebooks, paralyzed between fascination and fear. 3 Spanish tourists formed a protective cluster, the eldest crossing herself repeatedly. Don't leave just yet, kids, Turner called out, his voice cutting through their whispered prayers. Diesel loves an audience. The pit bull's growls took on a higher pitch, responding to the tension in his owner's voice, especially when someone's trying to pretend they're not scared. An elderly man wearing a pilgrim's badge stepped forward, his weathered face set in lines of disapproval. Basta! Enough of this nonsense. This is a sacred place of prayer and respect. Respect? Turner barked a harsh laugh, deliberately letting Diesel lunge forward before snapping the chain back. The pit bull's teeth flashed in the morning sun. Tell me, old-timer, how much respect you think this dress-up soldier deserves when Diesel here decides to test how fast he can really move? Luigi, the elderly pilgrim, stood his ground, though his eyes showed concern. Not for himself, but for the dangerous game Turner was playing. Son, that guard is a serving member of the Holy Father's protection detail. Diesel, Turner cut him off, his voice dropping to a command. Show this gentleman what we think of his opinion. The pit bull's snarl deepened as Turner let the chain extend another inch. Luigi took a step back, not in fear, but in tactical retreat. His weathered hands found the rosary in his pocket. Behind him, a Romanian family crossed themselves in unison. Two Polish priests began whispering the Lord's Prayer. A Japanese photographer slowly lowered his camera, recognizing something beyond his lens. A young couple who had been photographing the basilica slowly pocketed their phones. The woman's hand trembled slightly. A cluster of Brazilian pilgrims began backing toward the colonnade, their tour leader speaking rapidly into his radio. An elderly Swiss woman stood her ground, her jaw set in disapproval that needed no translation. That's right, Turner nodded with satisfaction. Everyone wants to play hero until Diesel gets interested. Isn't that right, boy? He reached down to pat the pit bull's head, a gesture that should have been affectionate, but came across as threatening. Now let's see what our fancy guard thinks about meeting a real soldier. Baumann remained motionless, but his trained eye hadn't missed a detail. He'd noted how Turner used the dog's responses to control the crowd, how each threat was carefully measured. This wasn't random aggression, it was calculated intimidation using an animal as a weapon. More concerning was how Turner kept shifting his grip on the chain, moving from proper control to deliberate agitation. Look at him standing there, Turner's voice took on a sing-song quality that made several onlookers wince. All stiff and proper, while Diesel here gets more and more curious. The pit bull's powerful body trembled with contained energy, responding to his owner's manipulative tone. What do you think, boy? Should we see if he's really as brave as he's pretending to be? A Gendarmeria Vaticana officer had appeared at the edges of the crowd, speaking quietly into his radio. But Turner caught the movement, and his face darkened. Calling for backup already? Well, Diesel doesn't like uniforms much anyway, do you, boy? He shortened the chain, bringing the pit bull's muscular form closer to his side. Maybe we should show everyone here what happens when someone thinks a fancy costume makes them untouchable. Above them, Pope Francis had begun the Angelus prayer, his voice carrying across the square through the sound system. The contrast was stark, sacred words of peace flowing over a scene of deliberate intimidation. The morning air grew heavy with tension as Turner's stance shifted, his intentions becoming clearer with each passing moment. The crowd had widened its circle, creating an arena-like space that would soon become a stage for confrontation. Tell me something. Turner addressed the guard directly, positioning Diesel just yards from Baumann's impeccably polished boots. Behind all that ceremony, all that tradition, you're just flesh and blood, aren't you? He let the chain extend slightly, allowing the pit bull to edge closer. Just like everyone else who thought they could stare Diesel down. The guard's perfect stillness seemed to irritate Turner further. In his experience, fear had a smell, a visible tremor, a subtle tell. But Baumann's bearing remained unchanged, as solid as the Vatican walls behind him. Even Diesel seemed unsure now, his aggressive stance undermined by occasional glances back at his owner as if seeking confirmation. You see, Diesel here has a special talent, Turner continued, his voice taking on a darker edge. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he warned, letting Diesel turn and growl in her direction. Diesel gets real nervous around phones, don't you, boy? makes him do unpredictable things. The woman slowly lowered her phone, but her other hand had found the arm of a nearby tourist, both standing their ground despite their fear. Around them, the crowd had taken on a new energy. Not just concern now, but a simmering anger at this deliberate threatening of a guard who couldn't defend himself. You know what I think? Turner moved even closer, Diesel's powerful body now barely 3 feet from Baumann. I think all this, he gestured at the guard's uniform with his free hand, is just for show, a costume to hide behind. But Diesel, he smiled coldly, he sees through that, don't you, boy? The pit bull's behavior had become increasingly conflicted. While still responding to his owner's aggressive cues, something about Baumann's unwavering presence seemed to confuse him. His growls were interspersed with moments of uncertainty, his powerful head tilting slightly as if trying to reconcile the mixed signals he was receiving. "We've done this before, haven't we, Diesel?" Turner's voice carried proud cruelty. All tough guys until Diesel showed them what real power looks like. A Swiss Guard commander had appeared at the edges of the scene, assessing the situation with professional calm. But before he could intervene, Turner's next words froze everyone in place. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," Turner announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard with deliberate menace. His fingers played with the chain's clasp as he spoke, the metal catching sunlight with each twist. Sweat had begun to bead on his forehead, not from the morning heat, but from growing frustration at his inability to provoke a response. "In about 30 seconds, Diesel here is going to test your dedication to standing still. And trust me," his smile turned predatory, years of using intimidation evident in every line of his face. "He's got quite the track record for making people move." The Swiss Guard commander took another measured step, his own military bearing evident in his controlled approach. But Turner's response was immediate, his body language shifting to encompass both threats. "One step closer," he warned, yanking Diesel's chain just enough to elicit a deep growl that echoed off the Vatican walls. "And everyone here gets to see just how fast Diesel can run." The pit bull's muscles bunched beneath his dark coat, responding to the increasing tension in the chain, though his eyes kept darting between Turner and Baumann with growing uncertainty. Baumann remained motionless, but his military training had already mapped out multiple scenarios. Through years of combat experience and specialized training with military working dogs, he'd noticed the subtle tells that others might miss. Diesel's ears would flick back at certain tones in Turner's voice, not aggression, but uncertainty, a sign of conflicted training rather than natural threat. He'd observed the dog's shifting weight patterns, the way his paws would spread and reset with each command, showing the conflict between trained responses and natural instincts. Most importantly, he'd recognized that the real threat wasn't the pit bull, but the man holding the chain, a common situation he'd encountered during his specialized service with working dogs. "Time's up, soldier boy." Turner's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, his fingers now playing with the chain's clasp in a way that betrayed his intentions. Each movement was deliberate, calculated to maximize the tension of the moment. "Let's see how well that training holds up when Diesel here decides to play." His fingers moved to the chain's clasp, the metal catch glinting in the morning sun as his thumb found the release mechanism. "Ready or not," the sound of the chain clasp releasing echoed across the square like a gunshot. "Get him, Diesel!" Turner's command cracked through the air, vicious satisfaction written across his face as the pit bull lunged forward. Time seemed to slow. Baumann's military training took over, his mind calculating trajectories and responses even as his body remained perfectly still. He noted every detail, the pit bull's powerful muscles coiling for the attack, the horrified gasps from the crowd, Turner's triumphant sneer. But most importantly, he saw what others didn't, the hesitation in Diesel's charge, the conflict in the dog's body language. At the last possible moment, when Diesel was mere inches from impact, Baumann moved. His motion was fluid, precise, and completely unexpected. Instead of defending or retreating, he dropped into a controlled crouch. His white-gloved hands, the crowd's terrified screams turned to gasps of amazement as Baumann caught Diesel mid-lunge, his hands finding pressure points that combat trainers had perfected over generations. The pit bull's momentum was redirected, his aggressive charge transformed into a controlled descent as Baumann guided him to the ground with gentle but firm authority. For a moment, Diesel's muscles remained coiled, his breathing rapid and shallow. His dark eyes darted between Turner and Baumann, confusion replacing fury. Baumann's hands didn't restrain. They guided, finding spots along the dog's neck and shoulders that gradually released tension. "Easy there, soldier." Baumann's voice carried the calm command of a military dog handler. Diesel's ears twitched at the tone. His panting slowed by degrees. Turner's triumphant expression had shattered into disbelief. "Diesel, attack!" "What are you doing? Get him!" But the pit bull's head turned toward Baumann at the sound of his voice, not Turner's. His tail gave a tentative twitch, not yet wagging, but no longer rigid with aggression. "You've been trained for this, haven't you?" Baumann continued, his hands moving with practiced precision. Diesel's breathing deepened. His weight shifted, no longer braced for combat. Minutes passed before the transformation became complete. Diesel's tail began to wag in earnest, his earlier aggression dissolving layer by layer under Baumann's expert touch. Finally, he lowered his massive head, pressing his chin to the ancient stones in quiet surrender. "No, this is impossible." Turner's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. "Diesel, come here now!" But the pit bull merely glanced in his direction before turning back to Baumann, responding to genuine authority over learned aggression. "You see," Baumann spoke while his hands continued their work, "generations of service animals." Diesel's eyes half closed as Baumann found the right spot behind his ears. Bred to recognize true authority, his eyes found Turner's across the crowd. The Swiss Guard commander had moved in now, accompanied by 2 carabinieri officers. Diesel remained perfectly calm, watching Turner's desperate commands with detached interest. Baumann guided Diesel through basic commands. Each response demonstrated what the crowd was witnessing. Turner's face had turned red. "He's my dog!" "Responsibility," Baumann replied simply. His hands continued their work as Diesel responded to each gentle signal. "Not ownership." The carabinieri officers moved closer, drawn into the demonstration. Diesel's tail wagged steadily, showing what the breed could be. The contrast spoke for itself. Parents who had shielded their children earlier now moved closer, letting them witness the transformation. The Irish seminary students nodded in recognition. The Brazilian tour group stopped retreating. The elderly Swiss woman's expression softened from disapproval to understanding. "The authorities will decide what happens next," Baumann concluded. "But this animal isn't dangerous by nature. What's dangerous is people who use animals to threaten others." As the Roman Animal Welfare Unit officers arrived, their expression shifted from concern to professional interest as they witnessed Diesel's impeccable behavior. The lead officer, a woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many cases of abuse, stepped forward. "Military breeding line, wouldn't you say?" She addressed Baumann, who nodded in confirmation while maintaining his subtle control over Diesel. "American Pit Bull Terrier, working line, from what I can tell," Baumann replied. "The response to pressure points and command positions suggests professional training before—" His eyes flickered to Turner, who was now being questioned by the carabinieri. "Before the deterioration of his training." The animal welfare officer knelt beside Diesel, her experienced hands confirming Baumann's assessment. "We'll have him evaluated properly, of course, but given what we've seen here—" She paused, watching how the pit bull maintained perfect position even as she examined him. "There are specialized programs for dogs with his breeding and initial training, service positions where his heritage can be properly honored." Turner's voice rose in protest from where the police were questioning him. "You can't take my property!" Multiple witnesses reporting intentional animal abuse. One of the carabinieri officers cut him off, reading from his notepad. "Using an animal as a weapon in a threatening manner, disturbing the peace at a Vatican monument." The animal welfare officer had produced a proper handling lead. Before she could attach it, Baumann demonstrated one final command. Diesel responded. Specialized units always looking for dogs with his breeding. As Turner was led away in handcuffs, the same crowd he had tried to intimidate watched in silent judgment. Diesel followed the animal welfare officer's lead without resistance, but turned to offer one final look at Baumann. Something profound passed between two beings bred for service, one having helped the other remember his true nature. Baumann resumed his post with military precision, his white gloves somehow still immaculate. The morning sun caught his ceremonial halberd as he returned to ceremonial stance, but observers noted something deeper now, the training and capability that lay beneath the surface. The Swiss Guard commander approached briefly. "Well handled," he said quietly, "though I suspect the dog handling wasn't covered in standard ceremonial training." 3 years with military working dog units before joining the Guard, sir," Baumann replied, eyes fixed forward. "Specialized in rehabilitation of service animals." The commander nodded. "Some training never leaves you." "No, sir, some training never leaves you." As the crowd began to disperse, parents explained to their children not just about ceremonial duty, but about the deeper purpose that lay beneath. High above, in the papal apartments, Pope Francis had completed the Angelus prayer. His final blessing seemed to encompass more than just the gathered faithful. It spoke to the transformation that had occurred below, where measured discipline had overcome manufactured threat. In the heart of Vatican City, genuine strength had proven it serves rather than intimidates.